All right, then that's what we'll do. This is Tuesday, December 29, 2020. This is the board meeting, Board of Nursing, Board of Registered Nursing. I'd like to call the meeting to order. We'll establish a roll call and establish a quorum. Beginning with myself, my name is Michael Jackson. I am the faculty member appointed by the governor, president of the board.
Ken Marlborough, Vice President, Public Member, appointed by the Senate Rules Committee.
Emilda's not here. Mary?
Mary Fagan, Nursing Services Administration, appointed by the governor.
Susan Naranjo, public member appointed by the speaker.
Ladies and gentlemen, Susan Naranjo is our newest member, public member appointed by the Assembly. We'd like to thank her for joining us, and we welcome her to the Board of Nursing. Don't worry, Susan, this is going to be a piece of cake for you. You're going to enjoy it. You're going to come away learning a lot. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
The next board member is Karen Skelton. Karen Skelton has left the board, go on and do some very important work. We will miss her, and we thank her for her service. Next board member is Dolores. Dolores?
Yes, this is Dolores Chioyo. I am an RN appointed by the governor in the direct provider bedside role.
Thank you very much. And last but not least is Betty.
Good morning, Elizabeth Woods, appointed by the governor in the advanced practice role, and welcome Susan to our board.
And our executive officer.
Thank you, Michael. This is Loretta Melby, or Lori, and I'm the executive officer for the Board of Registered Nursing appointed by the board.
Thank you very much. We've established that we have a quorum. We'll move on to item 2.0. This will be general instructions for the format of the teleconference.
Good morning. Reza, are you with us?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Welcome, welcome. Good morning.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. Sorry about the technical difficulties. I don't know what it was, but thanks.
No worries. Good morning. This is the BRN moderator. I will be moderating the meeting. To facilitate public comment, we will be utilizing the WebEx question and answer feature. When the board reaches a point in the agenda at which public comment is appropriate, the question and answer feature will be turned on, and members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by inserting the phrase, "I would like to make a comment," in the question box, which is typically in the lower right of your screen. I will then call on the individual and unmute your microphone. The individual will have 2 minutes to make their comments. I will not give a warning. As your time approaches, I will mute your microphone and will announce that your time has exceeded the time allotted. I will then move on to the next member of the public who has a comment. Please note that the question and answer feature is being used only as a means for the members of the public to represent that they would like to make a verbal comment. This is not a means to ask questions of the moderator or members of the board. Such inquiries submitted using this feature will not be answered. When asking a question, please make sure the question is directed at the host, me, in the dropdown. If any attendees utilize a profane name, they will not be called upon to prevent members of the public from being subject to profane language. While you are free to express criticism or negative views, for the sake of the members of the public participating on the call, please do not use profane language when making public comments to the board. I will provide a brief reminder of this approach at the start of each public comment item. Finally, when board members or senior staff are not speaking, I would like to remind them to mute their microphone. If I detect background noise during the meeting as a result of unmuted microphones, I will interject with a brief friendly reminder and mute your microphone. Thank you.
BRN moderator, thank you very much for giving us instructions on how the meeting format will go. We'll move along to item 3.0. This is public comments for items not on the agenda, items for future agenda. The board may not discuss or act on any matters raised during the public comment section that is not included on this agenda. except to decide whether to place it on a future agenda. So at this time, we'd like to open it up for public comment for items not on the agenda and future items for the agenda.
We will be opening for public comment now. I will be activating the question and answer feature. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Board President Jackson, there are no public requests for comment. Would you like me to close the window?
Yes, please. Thank you very much. All right, at this time, we'll move on to item 4.0, discussion and possible action to accept or revise the 2020 Board of Registered Nursing Sunset Review Report. And at this time, I'd like to make a motion for the Sunset Report. Motion to approve the Sunset Report with any suggested amendments, and I authorize staff to make any non-substantive changes, and also to delegate the board president and vice president to sign off on the final version before submission to the legislature.
I second. This is Dolores Trujillo.
Are there any public comments or any board discussion before we go on to the public comment?
This is Mary. I'm just wondering, we talk a lot in the Sunset Report about the customer satisfaction issues and that the work that's being done to resolve that, but I didn't see that we had actually established customer satisfaction targets, such as we have for like licensing cycle time. And is that something that we would like to put in here?
Absolutely. You could, the staff can work on that. Lori can ensure that that's in there. But is that one of the questions that the legislature is asking?
It is not currently one of the
No.
questions that the legislator is asking. So right now, when we get the Sunset Report, they give us a list of questions. So each one of these sections were a question that was presented to us by the legislators. We do a customer service satisfaction survey, and that is what you see included in there. We can, for future, look at setting some goals and expectations for that. That would actually not be part of this Sunset Report. That would be a process improvement that would be here on our side versus with the legislative side. The intent of the Sunset Report is for the legislators to enact new legislation to not sunset the board, and to move us forward, and then to address anything that is needed through legislation. So we would not need legislation to do any customer service related activities. So that is something that we can do separate from the sunset. Did that answer your question, Mary?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Any more questions from the board members?
This is Betty, and just something around the last issue. Will we be getting an update on what's happening with that? Because I was concerned about the time people have to stay on the phone, that they feel people are not courteous to them. Those are really issues that need to be addressed, and will we be getting feedback on that?
Yeah, this is not a
Yes.
part of the sunset, but
I understand that.
The customer service aspect is a part of the sunset, which is why we included the survey in there. Our board ops, Matthew Yates, is working really hard with his supervising staff and his team to improve the wait times. Last week, we actually had a couple moments, brief moments, where there were no calls at all on it, and that there was a 0 wait time. So we know that it, of course, was abnormal. It was holiday time, but we are working diligently with that. We're also looking at some more process improvement because the majority of our phone calls are licensing related. And currently our PIU staff are not trained in the licensing process. So Matthew Yates and his team have looked at this process, have met with Christina Sprigg and Macaulay Fusarens, our chief of licensing, and they are looking at increasing the scope of practice essentially for our phone agents. And what they're going to do is to be able to process some basic licensing functions. That way, when they are answering the phone, they can immediately provide assistance. So we have, since February, looked at this process. We're in the process of kind of fixing everything. It truly does take a community to do this. And so our licensing is working with our PIU staff, and Matt and Christina are pivotal.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. No problem. We hope to have really solid numbers to show improvement next year.
all right. Are there any other questions from the board member? Can we open it up for a public comment?
We will be opening for public comment now. I will be activating the question and answer feature. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in the request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Board President Jackson, there are no public requests for comments. Would you like me to close the window?
Yes, please. Let's close the window. On item 4.0, I can restate the motion if it needs to be restated. Once again, motion to approve the sunset report with any suggested amendments, authorize staff to make any non-substantive changes, and also delegate the board president and vice president to sign off on the final version before submission to the legislature. I have a first and a second, and at this time I'd like to call for the vote. And Michael Jackson votes yes.
Ken Marlborough votes yes.
Elizabeth Woods,
Yes, Woods.
Mary Fagan,
Mary Fagan, yes.
Susan Naranjo,
Yes. Yes.
Dolores Trujillo,
Yes, I vote in favor.
6 yeses, Board President.
Thank you very much. The motion passes. We'll move right along. Next is item 5.0, discussion and possible action regarding the process for selection of members of the Nurse Midwifery Advisory Committee pursuant to SB 1237, including possible delegation of authority to a subset of board members to review applications and nominate candidates. And it would be 2 2 committee members to review applications and nominate candidates. This is item 5.0.
This is Reza Pejhash, Board Legal Counsel. Board President, if I can just take a second and talk about this item.
Yes, please.
Okay, thanks. This issue of the process of appointing the committee for the Nurse Midwifery Committee and implementing SB 1237 in general has been on a few board and committee meeting agendas, and it's been discussed. At this point, I think what we really want to do is drill down on the details of how these committee members are going to be appointed, and just establish that concretely, so that the board members are content with the process. And if you have any concerns or suggestions for it, we can get it out now and discuss it, and to the extent it's agreed upon, incorporate that into the process. So that's the idea, and the proposal that has been discussed, I've discussed it with staff and the administrative committee, is to, because there's some logistical issues with the process of selecting committee members, as far as, especially if it were, in particular, if it were board members who were responsible for that process, issues as it relates to Bagley-Keene. If you had more than 2 board members communicating and discussing the applicant pool and things like that, that would all trigger the notice requirements of the Open Meetings Act and need to be done in an open session in a meeting. That didn't really seem feasible. So the proposal that's being presented and on the table and up for discussion, and choose what you want to do with it, is to delegate, as it says here, delegate authority to 2 board members who can review the applications and go through that process and work with staff to narrow down the applicant pool, identify nominees, and bring those nominees to the full board later on for consideration and perhaps voting to put those nominees in place as committee members. With 2 board members, that can happen outside of a noticed meeting. And of course, you can provide certain input today if you have it to those 2 board members that you may choose to delegate the authority to. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, that was the idea. And again, if you have any other concrete thoughts about how you want this process to go, now is the time to discuss it, because the goal is that after today, going forward, I think we've got a pretty large candidate pool already. So the idea is to, after today, start really narrowing that down and make some serious progress in getting these committees formed by early 2021 to take the next steps in implementing SB 1237.
This is Board President Jackson. I'd like to nominate Mary Fagan and Dolores Trujillo for the Nurse Midwifery Committee members, if they would be willing to accept that responsibility.
This is Mary. I have a question about how the selection criteria are going to be determined. Is that something that will be work that the entire board will do, or will that be something that the 2 committee members would put together?
I can respond to that. This is Reza, legal counsel. So the selection criteria, of course, we have a pretty general mandate from the legislature in the language of the statute, and that doesn't say much more than identifying the number of midwives and et cetera on the committee. The board today can talk about selection criteria. My advice was to keep it pretty general and high level. If there are going to be any specific criteria provided to the delegatees. I didn't want to narrow down the candidate pool more than ought to be, and to exclude candidates unnecessarily. So I think the board could today talk about if it has any specific selection criteria in mind. I would say to keep those. My advice is to keep those pretty general and high level, and common sense kind of thing. Not anything too specific that would really narrow down that pool. And then the delegatees, the board members who are given the authority would then have further authority to review and select the candidates.
This is Betty Woods. Are you talking now just about the nurse midwife advisory committee, or is the same thing going to apply to the nurse practitioner advisory committee?
Right now we're on item 5.0.
I understand that. I'm just asking, are we using the same, would we use the same criteria, since we have two different, we have nurse practitioners and nurse midwife?
So this is Reza again. I think, so item 6.0, the next agenda item is AB 890, as you know. So I think some of this discussion on this agenda item will carry over into the next agenda item as far as the process.
Right.
We've been set them up as two separate agenda items, but I think naturally that the processes may kind of mirror each other. So to the extent that there are different selection criteria that ought to apply to SB 1237 versus AB 890, you do have a chance to kind of independently consider them and bring up criteria or issues that are kind of unique to one or the other.
Thank you.
But to the extent that the processes will kind of be the same and mirror each other, again, we can kind of carry over a lot of this discussion into the next agenda item when we get there.
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Reza, this is Ken Marble. I just had a question. Was there some form of criteria already established for the application process for the midwifery advisory committee?
I wonder, Lori, can you speak to the announcements? I don't believe.
Yeah, the announcements were generic and only followed what was stated in the proposed bill, or the signed bill at that point. So it was very basic and it followed what was written in there. We did not add anything additional or change anything.
Okay, thank you.
Would Mary Fagan and Dolores Trujillo be willing to accept the assignment?
This is Dolores Trujillo. I will accept the assignment.
That's my recommendation to the board members, that Mary Fagan and Dolores Trujillo serve for the Nurse Midwifery Committee selection process.
I'll accept, but I would like some additional guidance from the board, at least in terms of broad categorization about how we would more define selection criteria in terms of diversity, or however we want to provide a little more direction would be very helpful to me.
I think Reza and Lori and Yvonne can work with the committee members to help them establish criteria.
This is Reza. I and board staff will certainly work with Mary and Dolores if they are voted into this role. In addition, if there are specific issues that board members would like to get out today and get that as something that Mary and Dolores consider throughout the process, that can also be discussed. If there's not anything like that comes up out of this, then certainly board staff and I will be, well, regardless, we'll be working with these folks to make this a smooth process.
Since we've already voted on the establishment of assigning committees, we don't need to take a vote here, do we?
I think if there's anyone else that wants to nominate themselves or anyone else, then we'd be looking at a vote. If the entire board is in agreement with the nomination, then I think you do need a formal action to delegate this authority.
I thought we have already taken this action before when we talked about committee assignments before.
No, Michael. So that was looking at the advisory committees themselves.
No, I'm talking about board. I'm talking about board committee assignments.
This is a brand new. It's a brand new authority that we're delegating out.
But when we had the discussion before, when we were making committee assignments for the board members, it was delegated to the administrative committee and the board president to make committee assignments.
I think because if you want to call this a committee, you can, but this is going beyond that. I think we are providing very specific authority to be it
To the board.
Dolores or anyone else.
Dolores and Mary.
Yeah,
Okay.
very specific authority to select to nominate the nurse midwifery committee members.
Okay. Are there any other candidates that would like to nominate themselves or any other nominations? Can I have a second for the two nominations that have been placed forward?
This is Betty. I'll second.
Are there any further board discussion? If no other further board discussion, can we open it up for public comment?
We will be opening for public comment now. I will be activating the question and answer feature. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in the request for comment. I have activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Board President Jackson, there are no published requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the window?
Seeing no further comment at this time, I like to call for the vote. Michael Jackson votes yes.
Michael, this is Lori. I was wondering if we could test the public comment function to ensure that it's working. I am a little shocked right now that we did not get public comment for Sunset and now did not get public comment on these bills. So I want to make sure that it that is working and that we're not missing something.
Sure.
I am in right now, Mark,
Yes.
and I'm not able to send anything. I am grayed out where it says send. However, it looks like
Macaulay just
was able
sent
to
something.
do it. So Yvonne was able to
Okay.
do it as well. and Matthew Yates was as well. I'm not able to.
Yes.
I don't know if that's appropriate.
I can see them. Patricia Gurney just submitted.
Perfect. Thank you for testing that out.
Tracy Gorgeous submitted. Mary Baker
Perfect.
submitted. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, public, for
Appreciate the
testing.
testing,
Thank you.
At this time, I'll call for the vote. Michael Jackson votes yes.
Ken Marlborough votes yes.
Mary Fagan,
Mary Fagan, yes.
Susan
Sorry.
Naranjo,
Susan Naranjo, yes.
Dolores Trujillo,
Dolores Trujillo, yes.
Elizabeth Woods.
Woods, yes.
The motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to item 6.0. With, like Reza said, much of the same information that was from item 5.0 carries over to item 6.0. And I'd like to nominate Elizabeth Woods, of course, and I would assist Elizabeth Woods in the selection process, Michael Jackson. Are there any other board members that would like to nominate themselves or serve on this selection committee? Hearing none, do I have a second?
I second. This is Dolores Trujillo.
Are there any board discussion?
Just Ken Marlborough. I just had a question. I think this will probably be for Lori. Where are we on the numbers? How many applications do we have, and what's the time frame for getting this process completed?
Yeah, we do not have an established time frame. I think we have a goal. The goal would be to have both of these committees for the nurse midwife and the nurse practitioner interviewed and appointed by late January so that they can do a first first committee meeting in February. That would be a goal. Of course, we did not expect the turnout that we did receive. We have well over 300 nurse practitioner applications to serve, not just NP, but physician, surgeon, public members, NP, to serve on the NP committee that would have to be viewed. So we have, our goal would be a 1 month time period, but we don't have anything in statute, anything that actually gives us a specific time frame. So we are allowed to be a little flexible on that, but knowing the importance of both of these bills and knowing how important it is to establish both of these committees, we do have a goal.
This is Mary Fagan. I'm wondering if it wouldn't be helpful for us to have some crossover between the two committees in terms of the criteria and consistency. So I'd potentially be available to be on both committees.
So just for a clarification on that, Dr. Fagan and Reza can chime in. Because of the Bagley-Keene, we can only have 2 members on each of the committees, and they cannot communicate amongst each other. That would be in violation of Bagley-Keene, and it would have to be a public meeting that would be notified. And that's why there's an appointment of 2 separate committee members. If you're asking to serve in lieu of Betty or to serve in lieu of Michael on this committee, where you would then be a part of the 2-person member of that committee for each one, that is an option, but it is not an option for a 3rd member or to have cross communication.
This is Reza. I can just add on to what Lori was saying, just to make it concrete. That's correct what she was saying. And this is not really, it's not an attempt to kind of do this behind the scenes or hide any part of this process. The reality is, if we were to have 3 or more board members working on one or the other, and they were in communication with each other, any such communication would have to take place in a noticed board meeting, in an open session like this. And again, it's not our intent to try to hide any part of this process, but the reality is that it's just not realistic or practical to conduct interviews of applicants and things like that in an open session of a board meeting. So for that reason, under the Open Meeting Act, if two board members or less, well, really, there's only going to be two board members communicating with each other. If two board members are communicating with each other outside of a board meeting, that's fine. We don't have to give notice and do it within this public forum. So that's why we came up with the proposal of delegating this authority to two members. And I can see if there was crossover, I suppose we could try to figure out a way to do it very carefully, but I think that would there would definitely be some limits on communication, and it would get a little. I'm having a hard time thinking through how it would work without triggering some Open Meeting Act issues. We did consider the idea of having just two board members be delegated for both the Nurse Midwifery Committee and the Nurse Practitioner Committee. And that's a possibility. And there were some potential advantages that we considered to that, in that there would be kind of just some commonality and just some consistency, having the same board members do it. But then there were some downsides as well. One of them being just simply the fact that there's over 300 applications just for the NP committee. So Mary, does that at all help with the question, or are you still?
As my questions have alluded to, I just want to make sure that we're consistent in terms of the type of selection criteria that we're using, with prioritization of diversity and what have you. So my thought is having somebody who's on both, but I get it in terms of talking about the amount of work that would be. But that's my priority, is that we're using consistent type of selection criteria across both.
So I think right now we've got nominees for the NP committee. So once we get that squared away, I think if the board wanted to talk about selection criteria and diversity and things like that as to one or both bills, we can definitely go there.
This is Betty. I have a question, please. I heard that the NP applications are over 300. Will the staff be doing the initial evaluations and then eventually the two board members will go through them, or are the two board members going to have to go through the 300 plus applications?
This is Reza. I can speak to that briefly, and if Lori or anybody else has anything else to add, please chime in. So Betty, I think a couple of things. First of all, to the extent that the board wanted to detail that process and how it should look, you can talk about that here. But the way that we've kind of envisioned it, I think, is that staff would review applications for things like just completeness and whether they've provided the right documents and things like that, and kind of screen them for just that objective, did you check all the boxes kind of thing, but not the subjective assessment of qualifications and things like that. So there may be some filtering that happens just at that level, similar to any hiring process with the state, where some applications just get kicked out because they didn't follow the instructions or provide the right documents or things like that. But there's been a lot of talk about board members actually being involved in this process. And so I think the way we've kind of envisioned it is that the board members would be the ones doing the review of any applications that met all minimum criteria, and going from there. Of course, I think the board members who we authorize, there's some room for them to kind of work with staff to kind of fine tune the process that's going to work for them.
And will the board members set up the criteria, ultimate criteria?
That's what we've discussed. I mean, today is the time here and now to do that. If you have specific criteria that you want to convey to Larry and Dolores, or to yourself and Michael, talk about that now. And if the full board is in agreement with it, then that's something those delegated board members will consider. Again, I've suggested not going overboard with criteria that are going to really kind of throw out a large number of candidates. But of course, there's some room for common sense selection criteria that if you have something in mind, get it out now and let's talk about it and go from there. If not, then it's going to be up to these folks that we give this authority to, within their sound discretion, to implement the criteria that we have from the legislature and general best practices.
Will we be taking any advisory from the APRN advisory committee members at all?
As far as the appointment of committee members, is that the question? With respect to who we're appointing?
We have the APRN advisory committee.
Correct.
And will we be taking formal input from that committee?
I don't believe that we're going to be taking formal input from that committee on the identity of the committee members, on who we ultimately confirm to be members of these committees.
So Betty, if any of the APRN committee members are on the phone on this meeting right now, they can chime in public comment and give feedback on what they think the screening criteria could be. And we can take that into consideration, or we as in you guys, I'm sorry. But in both of the specific bills, it does state that the board will appoint these committees. And so the APRN committee, of course, is not the board, and therefore they would not be the ones that would be appointing or providing input essentially in that capacity to this formation of the committee. I did also want to kind of chime in right now, as well as Reza was speaking, that our board staff is here and available to assist in any way possible with these committees. We would just need to have the direction from the board to let us know how much of an involvement that you guys would want us to take in participation of this committee formation. So just with the discussion and making a motion and letting us know right now, we can assist as much as you guys want us to do at this point.
Okay.
This is Ken Marbrough. I just want to make a quick comment. I have the full confidence in the 4 board members who are going to be on the committees. The only input that I would like to give is both of these committees will be providing advice on discipline and some administrative issues that the board will come up with. And one of the things that I would like to see is that on the applicants, that they show some knowledge and expertise in the areas of administration and discipline. as some form of a criteria as you choose.
Thank you for your comments, Board Member Marlborough.
This is Reza. I just that's a good point, Ken. I appreciate that, and I might just make a suggestion on that and any other feedback that's similar. I would my advice would be to express that as a factor that you'd like our board members to consider, and not kind of a disqualifying,
Right.
either you're in or you're out kind of thing. That there be, some
My only thing
some
is
value.
most board members that come onto the board have no experience with discipline.
That's that's part of why I'm suggesting that for a criteria like that it be, it could be considered kind of a bonus points, if you will, or just a factor rather than something that disqualifies a candidate if they have no experience or knowledge of discipline.
Well, this is Ken. I can live with that. I just know that that's going to be an important factor as we move forward.
We can also set up Ken as some sort of an orientation, very similar to what our board members get for board member orientation. We can set that up as well. We can go over our established disciplinary guidelines, and then I know their disciplinary guidelines are also being updated, so we can also go over that as well. So we will support the committee members on both of these committees throughout this process to make sure that they are as effective as possible.
Okay, thank you.
This is Betty again. At the present moment, the only criteria so far is in the initial application that the candidates will fill out. And at some point, we'll be putting together additional criteria. I'm just trying to, in my mind, get an idea of where we're going with this.
Yeah, Betty, thank you. So the criteria was already established within the bill itself, and that was what was put forth to the applicants. The applicants have already applied, and we have closed the application time period. It was a 10-day posting period. And we did receive, obviously, numerous applicants. So that criteria was established within the bill. That is who we have right now in our applicant pool. Additional criteria can be established between the committee members, the two board members on the committee, for the process that you guys will use to kind of filter through the applicants currently. And that can be done with some input here for consideration, but more than likely it will happen between the two board members that are appointed to the committee.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, if there's no further discussion from the board members, I already have a first and a second. Can we open it up for public comment before we vote?
We will be opening for public comment now. I will be activating the question and answer feature. Please refer to the screen share for the members of the public to see how they should type in the request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Bryce Doherty would like to make a comment. 1 second, Bryce. Go ahead, Bryce.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. Hi, I'm Bryce Doherty on behalf of the California Academy of Family Physicians. I appreciate the work the board's doing today. Very important issue. Remarkable that you've received over 300 applicants for this advisory committee. I just want to make a summarization of, I think, what the action is today on this item, and then to make a request. So it sounds like the board is going to delegate the authority to come up with the criteria, the nomination criteria and the selection process to a subset of the board, including Elizabeth Wood and Michael Jackson, along with staff. The goal is to interview and approve those potential candidates by the end of January, with the hope of them meeting in February. Are they going to be recommending certain candidates to the board for final adoption? Or when will we know when the advisory committee is completely seated is my question. And my second request is that we know of some applicants who have been notified that their application has been received, but others have not. So is there a way in which the board can notify applicants that their application has been received, at least confirm that they've received, confirmation that you've gotten it? And then is there going to be any other outreach to those candidates throughout the process? Thank you.
This is Board Counsel Reza Pejahech. I can speak to at least the first part of that. I think I think you generally described what we're doing today pretty accurately. You said that the board members that we're delegating this authority to would come up with the criteria, and the focus is more on the process of interviewing and narrowing down and nominating candidates. Ultimately, it is, as you said, that the subset that we delegate this authority to would simply nominate the candidates, which would ultimately have to come back before the board to officially confirm those folks into the role of committee members. As to the confirmation of receipt of applications, maybe Board's Executive Officer, Lori, can you speak to that?
Yes, and so the applicants were received early on, and as they were being received, the person that was monitoring that email box was sending out a notification letting them know that it was received. However, as the process continued, the number increased, and it became impossible for her at that moment to respond individually. If that is something that the board would like to see, where we can try to go back and rebuild that and send out a response, we can attempt that. It would just be incredibly time consuming. But if that is what is requested, we can look at a process to do that. We did, of course, receive well over 300 applicants for the NP committee, and over, I believe, 60 for the nurse midwife committee. So we're looking at having to send out over 400 emails to let people know that we've received them. But we could rebuild that and maybe delegate a staff to do a standard email if that is something that you guys are wishing to do.
Cynthia Jovanov would like to speak. 1 second. Go ahead, Cynthia.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can.
Hi, this is Cynthia Jovanov. I'm a nurse practitioner as well as a CANP chapter board member. And I want to thank you for opening this up. I just had two comments. One is in regards to choosing these panel members. I just want to make sure that you guys take all into consideration the diverse representation that we need, especially those that have a diverse background and expertise to make solid recommendations to the BRN. I'm asking that diversity in all forms is prioritized in this selection process, which includes race, ethnicity, geography, specialties, including acute care, psych, outpatient, community, rural, and underserved communities, which also include the academia sector as well as NP entrepreneurs. My second comment is in regards to discipline. You guys had discussed to select people that have experience. I would like to add that you also select those that have experience and strong knowledge of Joint Commission regulations and medical staff bylaws in all acute and community outpatient sectors, because as a nurse practitioner, we bifurcate to both entities, not just to the BRN, but also to Joint Commission medical staff bylaws. Thank you.
Samantha Gambles-Farr would like to make a comment. 1 second.
You hear me?
Go ahead, Samantha.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can.
Good afternoon. My name is Samantha Gambles-Farr. I'm a nurse practitioner intensivist at UC San Diego Medical Center. I would like to make a simple comment, please. My comment is that I would implore the board to leverage selection criteria utilizing practice methods to ensure diversity as it relates to practice sites, specialty, ethnicity, and gender. This would also allow for stakeholders' buy-in, a continued shift in nursing, and to lend to a variety of new perspectives and experiences to the NP Advisory Board. In addition, as it relates to AB 890, Section 4, Article 8.5, number 2837.102, Section B, in which it describes the advisory board of 4 NPs, 2 physician surgeons who have experience with NPs, as well as 1 public member. I understand that the discussion surrounding the criteria as it relates to disciplinary action was brought up in conversation in the last discussion. I would also like to point to the fact that there needs to be additional emphasis not only to that purpose, but as well as education, standardization of care, and other matters as it relates to the board, as that specific question was not by definition part of a specific question on the criteria that was sent out to my knowledge. And I just appreciate the board and thank you guys for your continued hard work and dedication to all the Californians. Thank you.
Patricia Gurney would like to make a comment. 1 second. Go ahead, Patricia. Patricia Gurney. We'll come back to Patricia Gurney. Sorry. Karen Bradley would like to make a comment. Go ahead, Karen.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you for your work on this important matter. Looking forward to this advisory board as that it will give expert guidance to the BRN as when AB 890 gets fully operational. I would like to make a comment about the criteria. I've heard Elizabeth Wood and Mary speak about this criteria. What would that selection look like? My colleagues have already started to speak about the NP advisory board as related to diversity for the role of the NP, but I'm curious, what is the structure or framework for criteria for the physicians that will be sitting on the committee, is there a specific criteria that's going to be used to look at what it means to work with nurse practitioners?
Natalie Diaz would like to make a comment. 1 second. Go ahead, Natalie.
Hi, good morning. This is Natalie Diaz with the California Primary Care Association. Similar to comments that have been made around diversity, would just encourage the selection committee and the board to make considerations for diversity, in particular diversity of practice settings and diversity of providers who serve the underserved. Thank you.
And we'll go back to Patricia Gurney. Go ahead, Patricia. Oh, okay.
Mark, I believe it was.
Patty Gurney.
I thought it was
Can you hear me?
Oh,
Can
we
you
can
hear
hear
me
you
now?
now. There you
Okay,
go.
hello. Thank you so much for this opportunity to comment. My name is Patty Gurney. I'm a pediatric nurse practitioner. I'm also president for CANP. As a nurse practitioner and certainly in leadership for our nurse practitioner profession in the state, I would just request that the criteria for this selection include nurse practitioners who are experts in both law and administration regulation, in academia, and also practice leadership. It's very important because all of these regulations are going to affect nurse practitioner practice in California. So the folks on this committee need to have expertise in these areas. I'd also like to request that there be some criteria set for the physician members of the committee. For example, why is the physician applicant interested in being on the member? Understanding the relationship of physician and NP practice. How has the physician applicant supported the growth and development of NPs? And what does the physician applicant know about NP laws and regulations? All of these things are very vital because the physician members will obviously be involved in formulating the recommendations for regulations. I'd also like to comment about the selection of a public member, again, with criteria about their perception of NP practice, experience with NPs, and then a statement about why that public member wants to be involved. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and CNP offers our willingness to definitely work with the committee in the formulation of these regulations. Thank you.
Garrett Chan would like to make a comment. 1 second, please. Go ahead, Garrett.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Good morning, and thank you to the board for having this conversation. I'm very thankful to the previous comments made by the public and by the board members. I just wanted to clarify one thing that I heard Ken Marlborough say around the concept about experience with administration and discipline. I guess I take that comment a little differently in terms of knowledge about discipline from the BRN perspective. I would agree as a administrator of advanced practice providers that knowing that there's a whole process that happens prior to reporting somebody to a board is, I think, essential in understanding how do we get to having somebody, an NP, for example, be reported to the BRN. And so having that understanding and background knowledge, and I think Mary Fagan, as an administrator, as a chief nurse executive, understands those processes are important. And this also goes back to Cynthia Jovanoff's comment around the Joint Commission, medical staff bylaws, having experience with those, that we do need to have people understand all of the discipline and administration prior to being reported to the BRN, because we want to make sure that the person who is under investigation gets the right due process. And given that the advisory committee is tasked with making recommendations to the board, having solid knowledge about that would be important. So thank you very much. I appreciate, again, the hard work of the board today.
Board President Jackson, that concludes all public requests for comment. Would you like me to close the window?
Yes, please. You can close the window. Thank you. Seeing no further comments from the public, I'd like to call for the vote. Michael Jackson votes yes. Kenneth Marlborough,
Ken Marlborough votes yes.
Mary Fagan,
Mary Fagan, yes.
Dolores Trujillo,
Dolores Trujillo, yes.
Susan Naranjo,
Susan Naranjo, yes.
and Elizabeth Woods.
Woods, yes.
Thank you very much. The motion carries. Thank you, everyone, for your public comments and your information. All right. 7.0 was taken off of the agenda. We'll move on to item 8.0. This is closed session. These are disciplinary matters. The board will convene in closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 111.26, Subdivision C3, to deliberate on disciplinary matters, including stipulations and proposed decisions.
Thank you, Michael. Susan, as a new board member, I wanted to make sure that you are aware that the closed session call-in information was sent to your DCA email address, along with all the rest of the board members. Additionally, on the next slide, there will be a slide that's up. It is a new process for us, where there will no longer be a WebEx that takes place at the end of when we're going into public session. So the WebEx will end, and the board members on the completion of closed session will come in, will not make any other actions or moves other than to adjourn the meeting.
So we can leave the WebEx at this time?
Yes.